Welcome. We are speaking with Joe Kresoja today, and we get to hear about not only his color codes, which was kind of the reason that I asked him on the podcast, because I heard that he was creating these intuitive paintings for people that were sort of these representations of their energy bodies. And he's going to talk a little bit about that, but we actually ended up talking more about things. I was really actually glad that I did this. I just sort of spontaneously asked, well, what would you like to talk about? And we ended up talking about his ayahuasca journeys and a whole bunch of other things that were not related to his art. I met him through the Joshua community, through Gary Bodley, whom I had on the podcast a few episodes ago. And I'm going to have his partner, Christy Levy, on in the next episode. So definitely stay tuned for that. She's a psychic medium, and her perspective on things is super interesting to listen to. The stuff that she's able to do, her purple power. I also, before we get into the episode, I want to thank the people who have left me reviews on the podcast, or us reviews on the podcast. Since I have been reminding people to do so, I noticed that there hadn't been some comments for a while, or reviews for a while. So thank you so much for everyone who left comments and reviews. I really appreciate that. It helps the algorithm find this podcast when they know that people are interested enough to leave a review. So please, click the star thing, but the best thing is also just to type something, like really enjoyed listening to the episode with Joe Kresoja or whatever it was. All right, well, here we go. Let's get into the podcast.
Hello.
Oh, I'm just noticing your green drawer thing in the background. That's really cool. I'm like a huge green fan. My eye was drawn
That
to
was
that.
my wife's. So
Was it?
yeah, she
Oh,
painted it.
oh, nice. You also have like this really glorious painting. Um, what is the title of that, or the theme?
Ascent. I did that after, I don't know if you've ever heard of Tom Kenyon. He's a sound healer artist guy. There's a documentary of him on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
He's
No,
amazing. He's
I don't
got
know that
like
I'm familiar.
4-octave voice, and he wrote a couple books where he channels he's also a psychologist. He channels the Hawthors. And I read his book, and they had this series of meditations called the Three Geometries. And I just started doing those meditations for like 3 months straight every day. And it was because of that I painted that painting.
So it's ascent. Is it not two words, ascent, but ascent, like ascending?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the feeling of those meditations?
Uh, just golden light coming in through the crown chakra and spreading out through the rest of the body.
That's cool. Was it like a sound meditation?
Not those in particular, but I did use some of his sound when I was doing those meditations.
What was
Because if
the
you buy the book, he has a CD, and he has certain tracks that go along with which each of those meditations.
Okay. I'm asking because I was turned on to another meditation. Oh, I'm trying to think of what it was called. I think it was called like Soul Awakening, or I can't remember, but it was so funny because it was like I could feel the power of it, but it was just silence. Like they would go,
Right.
okay, we're starting now, and then for 5 minutes it would be complete silence that
Yes.
something was happening, and then
Right.
it
Some
ended.
sort of transmission. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So was it like that, or was it like guided?
Well, I just went through the meditations in his description because I found that because
Oh,
there's
okay.
certain
So you
things you
did it
do
yourself.
inside. Like the first one, you do a figure 8 inside your mind. Like pretend there's a light. You do a slow figure 8,
Ooh,
and then you do
okay.
it backwards, like the infinity symbol. And you do that a few times, and then you go to the other one, which is the atom. You spin it around certain ways. You pretend it's a light around your body. And the third one is using a certain shape, which I put the shape on there, which is this little, I forgot the name of the shape. It was a tectohedron or something. I forgot the name of the shape, but it's kind of like a pyramid.
Okay.
And then there's a pyramid on the other side, and they're attached. I don't know what that shape's called, but
I'm
that's
not good with
spinning and
shape.
it comes into your crown, and it's. I did that every day for, geez, 3 months, and then I painted that painting.
How long do you do, like, for example, that? I mean, even with you just describing that, like, I can sort of feel it in my head. That feels really intense. Like, how long do you keep that
Well, what I did,
going?
because I went pretty slow, because I noticed there's certain parts that you'll be like, it feels uncomfortable, or I can't quite put it there. And that's when I was like, I was interested in that. And I remember when I was doing it, there was a certain part of my head when it got to, it felt really good. Like, oh, wow, that's really good. So then after I did it, I'd go back to that part and put my attention back and forth to kind of massage it.
Oh, that's really cool. Did you feel like memories activate, or like what did you think, what was going on
I just
in
felt a
your
lot of
sense?
energy around my head.
Yeah.
A lot of energy, but I feel that a lot. So it was kind of like, yeah, whatever. I don't know what that is, but
I remember the first time that I actually got into meditation was after reading the book. He talks about, was it many minds, many masters?
yes, I've heard of that book.
Yeah, and I was convinced that if I could like reach far back enough that I could like, get all the past life information. That's what actually got me into meditation.
Oh, really?
So yeah, as you were saying that thing, I'm like, whoa, I wonder if like if like that activates like memories of past lives or
If I haven't recalled, I think the whole series of meditations, which were called the three geometries, was to give you access to other beings out there. It was to help open the portal.
I have to check that out. That sounds really cool. So that's not even like what you do and why I asked you to be on the podcast, but that's all super interesting. um, so yeah, you've been posting your or images of your paintings. There, it's correct to say paintings, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Because I remember I had someone on and I assumed that his artwork was paintings and it was actually drawings. So when you can't see it up close, sometimes it's
Yeah, yeah.
um but anyway, so yeah, your paintings you've been posting in the Joshua group. We both are part of Gary Bodley's program, who I had at this point, I think it will be like 4 episodes from now or 4 episodes since, because I just had Gary
Yeah,
on.
I watched that one.
Yeah. So and he told, or no, it was Christy that first told me about your color codes, which maybe we should talk about that because that's super fun.
Yeah, it's something I'm really excited about that I'm doing now, and it's something new, and I get a lot of joy out of it. And every time I do one, it seems like it's becoming more clear and better. So, what are color codes? I'll tell you how it started. It
Yeah.
was during the pandemic, and I'm at work. I've worked as an artist in the video game field for almost 30 years, but I don't anymore. But I was working at a video game company. The pandemic happened, and we all got to work from home. And so we have meetings like this, right? But there was no video. We just had, Google Meets. And I would notice images and patterns come to me when people talked. And when someone else would talk, they would change. So I was like, interesting, cool, whatever. And I would just doodle little shapes down when what was happening. And then since I'm a big time meditator and I meditate every morning, one time in meditation, it just came to me, paint these for people and call them color codes. It's all that came through, and it kept nagging at me. So then I started something called a prototype project, and I did it for some people, and it's produced some really good results. I mean, when I was painting it, stuff comes to me to tell the person, and it's almost kind of like a reading per se. And from there, I just kept doing them, and yeah, I find them absolutely exciting for me. And
That's so
everyone who's had
cool.
one just has really gotten a lot out of it. So yeah, they're exciting.
Have you seen this? I think it's a TikTok video. I don't know. Ondine, who's also part of the boot camp, she was actually just on with her sister,
No, I haven't.
Karina. She shared this with me, and it's like these 3 patterns that are like see-through. So it's like on a see-through sheet of paper, I guess.
Oh, yes.
And you overlap them
Yes.
and it creates like a human face. Have you seen that?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh, it's nuts. Do you feel like these are like uh what it was literal in that sense? Like, I mean, I know it's not creating a human face, but do you feel like this is some sort of representation of like a light body, or like what's your sense of it?
Well, my sense of it, well, first let me back up a bit. There's a reason why, because I can paint figures and shapes and I mean people, places, and things.
Sure.
But for these, I have a real strong pull not to do that for these, because that gets the mind too active and concentrates on something else, like, oh, hey, there's a face there. It's my face. Look how pretty. So it's basically just colors and shapes. And I think it's some sort of signature that I'm getting from the person. And depending upon what they want to focus on, because I've noticed I can make these, which I'm calling some of them as incantations. Like I did one for my wife recently to bring her more success. And we have a discussion about it, and I take some notes and I do some little scribbles, and then I start it. But it's just to bring that into her life, and I will talk to her afterwards of what might be stopping this or what to look out for and things like that. So it's basically just a color representation of you, your core at the moment. And the reason I say at the moment, because if I did one for you right now and did one for you a month later, it would be different.
Yeah. Interesting. So can you give me an example? Like, is it something that you sort of just choose to do in the moment? Or, I mean, I know when you were saying the Google Meets, it was just sort of came on automatically, but now that you're aware of it, is it something that like you focus in on and or is it just sort of happening whenever you go out? Like you're just seeing all these.
If I focus in on something, it will start happening. But when I first do it for somebody, we have a meeting on Zoom and I ask them a series of questions. I take them through a couple-minute meditation. And this is for me to get the connection a lot stronger. And once the connection's made, I can do the painting later. Because once I start the painting, images and stuff start flowing to me, and just things start coming to me, like, you should mention this, you should mention that. But I don't write any of that down or what I should tell them, just because I'm not a very fast writer and I don't think it's my strength. But when I go over the color code later with somebody, all that, I just have to look at it, and all the stuff that needs to come up and be said will be said. That's all kind of spontaneous, that'll happen. But I do see a lot of images and stuff. There'll be certain themes, but that's part of it, because it's never static. It's not like this is an image of a green triangle. It's more like it's undulating and moving, but there'll be certain shapes that are always consistent in there at the time. And I'll paint most of it in one sitting, like bam, few hours or an hour, get it done. And then I put it away and I don't look at it until the next day to see if there's a pool to take things out or put things in. And once that pool isn't there to change anything anymore, I know it's done. Because sometimes I gotta like, part of me is like, oh, artistically, it'd be much better if I sprinkled some stuff on this side. I gotta watch myself do that. And I find that very interesting, because, parts of me always wants to make it balanced and, but there's certain commonalities I see in all of them now. So that is good.
Huh. When you were saying the thing about writing, that sort of got me thinking, because I find, so in the boot camp that we do that with Gary, there's a lot of writing, and you're meant to sort of be channeling your own inner being. And I find my hand starts to hurt because it's like so fast. I'm like, okay, just
mine does that too, actually.
And I wonder, because I've never really thought about this. I'm like, maybe that's a creative thing, because logically, like if you could get everything that you were experiencing down in words, you probably wouldn't need to make a painting, or like in my case, write a song, or, right. I don't know. That was just something that came to me as I was thinking that maybe that makes sense, like maybe it's slower for some people. I don't know.
Yeah. Because a lot of it comes out, I've noticed, like one big kind of emotional mess, and then it's parsed as I do it.
With the painting, not with the writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I've been noticing I have a session tomorrow with a person, but as I was just thinking about the person, an image came to me, and we haven't even connected yet, like on Zoom. So I'm curious if that same image is going to pop up tomorrow.
Hmm.
I don't know,
Hmm.
but I'm excited to find out actually.
Do people mostly like can they just go to your website and sign up, or are you?
Yeah. Go to
Yeah.
my website, and if they have any questions, they just want to like dialogue with me about it or just email me about it, I'll answer any questions about
Yeah.
it.
That's really cool. So I'm curious about your video game sort of background. That's really, really interesting to me. Was that like did that come from like a love of video games or just like a great
No,
creative outlet?
I graduated art school in 92, and I just fell into it like a year or two later. Video games were much different back then. And I just fell into it and learned on the job and learned 3D modeling, texturing, animating, all that. But I never really liked it. I
Hmm.
mean, that's not fair. There was parts of the whole career that I absolutely loved because of the friendships, and there was some creative work at the time. But I've never been into video games at all, or the whole popular culture they represented for me. I just really never have.
Hmm. That's
And I
really
know
interesting.
people always say video games, oh, how fun. You played them all the time. It's like, no, I didn't. And most people that make them don't. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot harder work than
Really?
people think. Yes.
But I'm guessing you're more on the creative side of things. You're not coding them, or do you do
No,
both?
I never
Yeah.
coded. It was
Okay.
all just art,
Oh, okay. How does
which is
that
fun in
work?
its own sense, but I can't look at a video game without dissecting it as far as like,
Uh,
I see what's going on under the hood. I see
okay.
what they're doing. And it's because of that, it's kind of not as fun anymore.
So you're given like, okay, are you just sort of giving characters or like designing landscapes? Or I don't know
Well,
anything about that world.
I've done so much of it at different stages of my career. Because at one point I did, one of the games I was on, I concepted, drew out the monsters, but then we would also get to 3D model them and texture them and animate them. That was a long time ago where it wasn't so broken up as it is now. As the industry's gotten bigger, they've kind of broken up a lot of the art department rules. Like there's animator section, there's a texture section, but back then we kind of did it all. An artist drew, animated, textured, rigged their character, and just did the whole gambit.
Why? Like, why is it parsed out now? Is it cheaper
Because
to do it that way?
games are so much bigger, and if it's a AAA game, it's just
Mm.
huge. And since the horsepower of phones and PCs and the consoles are so big, you can the technology got better, so you can put more stuff into just one character.
Okay.
So they just chopped it up
Huh.
because it would take too long for one person to just do a character all the way through. It
Right.
just makes no sense.
Right. That's crazy. My youngest son is really into modeling, or he was. He's more into 2D animation, but
Yes, I switched to 2D because I
yeah,
was doing 3D for so long. I got tired of it, and I was
yeah,
just like, I don't want to do this anymore.
yeah. Well, he's 7, so he has some time.
Yeah, totally. You can do anything.
Yeah. Um, but okay, and wow, that's really interesting. I mean, in a sense, it was like you figured out a way to monetize your art early on, right? Like you didn't get a day job and then do art. It was like you're,
Yeah, I got paid to get better, basically.
yeah. Oh, that's a great way to say it.
Yeah.
So do you use the modeling in like in your own art now?
No, I've completely abandoned 3D art. I'll mess around in Photoshop and some other art paint programs, but for the most part, no.
Okay. So what you do now for yourself is more physical, like
Yeah, it's all
canvas.
traditional stuff.
Yeah.
I find just the tactileness of it to actually touch it, and this is just my own personal opinion. I like art that's original as far as like this is an original, and I know people like prints and stuff, but
Mm.
once you put an original painting on a print, it's always on the print. It doesn't have no texture. An original acts to light differently. There's some parts are glossy, some may not be. I mean, it's just, and the colors are richer.
Yeah. So do you still design video games?
Nope.
No, you just do that. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
What was the sort of exit route out of that?
Oh, that was pretty not too long ago. The whole company got laid off. So I took that as a sign from the
Oh,
universe to this is time. Because I've tried it before, just being a artist, and it never really quite worked out.
yeah.
But it was time. And so the jump has been made.
Yeah. If you don't make it, the universe does it for you.
Basically, yeah, it was perfect timing. And this
Yeah.
time I didn't freak out. So it's all good.
Yeah. Where do you live?
Los Angeles, California.
Oh, okay. I was born there. I live near the Seattle area.
Yeah, I lived in Seattle for the longest time.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
I moved there in 89 and I left about
Oh,
10 years ago.
it was so different.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know that from being here, but my partner has lived here for like 25 years. And a
The
friend of
past
mine grew up
5
here.
years there, the whole landscape of that place drastically has changed.
Yeah. Yeah, we live kind of suburbs, and it used to be all farms, and now it's like tech companies and apartment buildings, and it's
Right.
pretty crazy. Yeah.
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 That seems to be happening almost everywhere.
Yeah. Well, there's no room for it in LA, but
Yeah. Unless they start building up like
yeah,
New
that's
York.
true. Yeah. Yeah. So what are you working on like currently? Are you mostly doing the color codes or
I'm doing the color codes and I'm doing paintings on the side that just I want to do.
Mhm.
I'm doing one now for, he doesn't know it, but a musician friend of mine who he has a tattoo on his hand. And I asked him if I could take a picture of his hand, and I'm going to do a painting of it.
Oh, cool.
And so I've started that. And I got some ideas in my head that I want to paint some really big paintings, but that requires me to either have the canvas shipped here or I create it here myself.
Oh,
I'm just
okay.
kind of pulled to do some real big stuff.
Do you build canvases now?
I used to all the time, but since I moved to LA, I kind of left a lot of my gear. I gave my gear to some fellow artists
Oh, okay.
in Seattle.
Did you have more space? Is that
Yes,
yeah. Yeah. It's not LA is
I kind of pared down coming here.
yeah. Yeah. So um gosh. So I don't know what else to ask you. What do you want to tell me?
Well, that's an interesting question. What do I want to tell you?
Yeah, what else is like going on? What should I know?
Well, I'm currently working through a lot of limiting beliefs, so that's good. That's good. Limiting beliefs that I adopted from my childhood, being the youngest of five.
Hmm.
I always noticed that when people, there's a lot of books out there, they talk about your childhood and they always talk about your parents. But there is very little emphasis on siblings.
Hmm.
Because they'll mention it a little bit, but they don't mention it, I don't think, enough. Because
Yeah.
my both of my parents worked, so a lot of my interactions were with my older brothers and sister. So that had a big impact on me. I'm realizing now, and I'm moving past a lot of that.
They were like your parents.
And in a way, more, some of them were just bullies,
Yeah.
to be quite honest with you. So
That's kind of how I mean, it's interesting because I guess there's not like the age gap that would make you think that they're like parental, but like so many parents are basically grown children that don't really know what they're doing anyway,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I remember I had a friend who was the youngest of like 7 or 8 or something, and that was a big deal for him too. I'm not sure that like if you, well, definitely not if you're an only child, but like I was one of two. My sibling was definitely influential, but it had more to do with how my parents related to him. So I would still say it was like parental. Um, so maybe it's because there aren't that many big families.
That's true.
Yeah.
Something just came to me to ask you since I've done quite a bit of plant medicine
Oh,
as of last year, ayahuasca. And since ayahuasca is so, music is such a huge part of it. Like I did not realize how big of a part of it was, which makes me ask you if you've ever done it because you're a musician, because
that's
ayahuasca is so influenced by music when you're actually on the experience.
so funny. No, I've never done it. I've had a few plans to. Um, I have somebody who, so I have one song that people will write me and tell me, or like they'll see me or whatever. I'm like, oh my gosh, I heard your music in an ayahuasca ceremony. Like I was hearing this for years before I really knew what it was. And there's this couple that live in San Diego that follow me on YouTube, and he keeps trying to get me to come down to do an ayahuasca ceremony. He's going to treat me to it with his shaman because he's like, you need to hear what your music sounds like in an ayahuasca ceremony. So it's funny you brought that up, but I don't know. I've been a little shy about it, honestly, because it like feels, I don't know. I had a mushroom experience, like a pretty hardcore mushroom experience at the beginning
Right.
of the year. That was really great, but afterward I felt sort of like mildly nauseous and like had no appetite for like a week.
Right.
And I was like, I'm not sure if I could handle ayahuasca.
I will tell you, it's intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, the shaman we go do, they play live music, and
Oh, wow.
it's all live. There was no pre-recorded stuff.
Yeah.
It's just astounding how, the songs are, a lot of the songs are made to get you to purge,
Mm.
and they take you to places, because I've been to the same person multiple times, and certain songs take you to the same place every time.
Oh, wow.
And it's really interesting. It's just, in some songs you just start crying because it's just so emotional. And I just didn't know that. I didn't know going in how important the music actually is. And it's just like jaw dropping, like they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I mean, to do it without music, it's just like, oh my gosh.
Do you want to hear? I was actually listening to, do you ever listen to Aubrey Marcus
Yes.
podcast? So he was speaking with a guy named Matthias De Stefano. Are you
Yeah.
familiar with him?
Yeah.
Like, I'm really enamored. Um, Remembers all his past lives, and I started watching his series on Gaia because Christina from the boot camp recommended that too. But they were talking about, or he was talking about Matthias, about his ayahuasca trip, because Aubrey's a huge fan of psychedelics, I guess. And um, he was saying how like they did it in Peru, and I'm not sure there was music, but he was having like this completely centered experience, and his friends were like vomiting and whatever all around him, and he heard it as music.
Yeah, absolutely. It just seems to be part of it. I would agree
Yeah.
with that, because one of the things about ayahuasca, I've never purged.
Oh, interesting.
I've been to 4 ceremonies, and each ceremony you do it twice,
Okay, yeah.
2 nights. And I have never purged. I've come close. I have other things. Have body shakes and yawning and stuff like that, but I have never purged. I wanted to, but it's never happened for me.
Huh. You do it with your wife?
Yes.
Yeah. Is that like, does it feel like you're doing it with your wife?
Well, the shaman does not let couples sit together
Okay.
for various reasons. I mean, he has some pretty, I won't say hardcore rules, but he has some pretty solid rules. I mean, this is like ayahuasca for grown-ups. It's not
Yeah.
some hippie commune where everyone gets up and sings kumbaya and hugging each other. I mean, there's very rules that you don't do, and it's
Yeah.
completely pitch dark in there. And the first time we did it, she was on one side and I was on the other. And this is when she was still coming out of her illness, and I could hear her purge, and just my heart broke. I'm like, oh, I wish I could be there. And comfort her, but I was tripping balls to, I couldn't help at all. So I was in my own thing. Because
Right.
when I first took it, when it started to hit really hard, I was like, oh my God, why did I do this? But each time it's been drastically different. And then we got into Joshua and we went to sessions, and then it completely changed once I knew of the Joshua material. The ayahuasca experienced even, it made me realize that what the ayahuasca was doing to me is like, I would have these positive fantasies that come up and these psychedelic, and it's hard to describe ayahuasca to somebody who's never done it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things are happening at once. But I'd get these visions of like these positive fantasies. And then afterwards, what came up was all the things that were in the way of that happening. And that was like negative thinking, how I'm thinking, but that wouldn't just be like, hey, Joe, you think this way. It would come in with a certain scenario or memory, or just a made up thing of how I'm interacting with the world. And that would come flooding in. And then once I realized that, I was like, oh, I see what's happening. It's showing me what's in the way. And then once I realized that, bing, it just started happening over and over and over on its own, but got more magnificent as each time went. And then by the end of that ceremony, it felt like I was being rained on by inspiration. It was just so magical.
I like that visual. Do you experience it as visual?
I do, yes.
Is that okay?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense for you.
And it's very emotional, and it's everything basically, but I do experience, some people don't experience any visuals, but I do every time.
When you say it's like it's like a dark room, is this like somebody's living room? Are you in like a warehouse? Like what?
Well, the place is rented out, and it's rented. I can't say what it is because I'm held to secrecy.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But it's a nice place.
Bigger than a bread box?
Yes. And there's only about 12 of us.
Okay.
With the shaman and 2 of his helpers. And those 2 play music as well as the shaman does.
Yeah, I have a friend who plays tabla or who was, I'm not sure if he still is, for ayahuasca ceremonies. He's had a few like not so positive experiences with it, I guess, where it's gotten a little weird, but yeah, I'm glad that you've had like positive, and that I think the structure is probably really important for that.
Yes, yeah. And the dieta before it. Some people don't take the diet very seriously, but we did. And the diet it also consists of no social media, no aggressive music. Basically, if you're going to listen to music, let it be ceremonial music. So no media, and that's something that most people can't do because we're so addicted to our phones and scrolling. I mean, if you cut that out, your life's going to be a lot better. It's basically to get your nervous system cleansed out, other than the foods that you're not eating anymore. It really gets you prepped. And what I've noticed is a lot of the stuff on top that you haven't dealt with, that gets released while you're doing that. You may have little fits like, I want a burrito or whatever. That gets taken care of first.
What is the diet exactly?
Well, ours was certain things you can't eat. No caffeine, so no coffee. No sweets. No onions or garlic.
Okay.
No salt.
Oh,
there's
okay.
Things on the list that you can't.
You had me until you said salt. Okay, yeah, that would be hard. Yeah. Can you eat seaweed? Or is
I think you can.
Yeah.
I think you can. He gives you a big list of stuff you can and can't do.
Yeah.
Or you shouldn't do. Some people don't. And I guess some of them is kind of like the garlic and onions, there's certain reasons for them. And one of the reasons is if you purge in there, it's going to smell horrible, because one of the things that really happens on ayahuasca is your senses are heightened to the maximum. So any smell really smells. And that's one of the things you can't come to the ayahuasca is with like perfume on or, heavy deodorant. You can't, it's got to be fragrance free because it'll affect somebody else's experience.
So is there like ventilation?
Yes.
Yeah, that's nice. Are you given a bucket, or how do people deal with
We
like,
brought our bucket, but there's always extras.
okay. I'm very practical. I just,
No, yeah. That's the thing most people ask about is the bucket. But
yeah,
yeah, but I've never used mine. So
yeah. Do you feel like pre ayahuasca, post ayahuasca, your art has significantly changed?
I'm not sure if significantly, but it has changed. It makes me a lot more that's a good question. I'm not sure if I can answer that
Hmm.
because I don't see a big difference, but who knows, you know?
Yeah. Is the experience of creating it any different? Have you noticed like in your process?
I would say the connection to my inner self is a lot more clear.
Yeah.
Each time I come back from it, it's radically different. I mean, this time, the last time I came back from it, it just felt like I had so much more space in my body, like tons and tons of space in my heart.
When you're doing a painting, does it look like you're seeing something and then you're trying to replicate what you see in your mind? Or is it sort of like you're being guided to do certain strokes and it's revealed to you at the end, or something else?
I would say a mixture of it all, depending on the painting. Some paintings I have, well, some paintings I'll have like a composition will come to me or like put figures here and do this and do that, but I don't have the colors figured out.
Hmm.
Or it'll be vague, like there's a figure here and this part's going to be bluish and this part's going to be, so there's that. But other times it's just like make it up as you go, because something I've noticed about myself, I don't like to have everything pre-planned. Like if I completely drew it out meticulously and then did the color roughs, and
Mm-hmm.
then it would just felt like I was a wrist when I did the big painting. And I really like the fact that you, in the moment, you're making that decision, because right there, that juice of that spontaneity, that's where the creativity happens. So I really like that. So it's a mixture of a little bit of all of them.
So it sounds like you're making some sort of a rough sketch before you do any painting.
Sometimes, and sometimes I just go for it with the paint
Okay.
and then see what happens.
Huh, that's cool.
Kind
Yeah,
of
I
mix
don't
it
know.
up, keep it
What?
fresh. I
Yeah.
kind of like to mix it up and keep it fresh.
Yeah. Yeah. My small experience with painting was that like I could never get what I was visualizing to come on, this is like when I was in high school or whatever, because
Right.
which was, I guess, sort of a frustrating experience, because I had this like amazing world in here that like wouldn't communicate to
Wouldn't
the,
translate.
it's like, well,
Yeah.
that's not what I yeah. Maybe that's why I like music. Because it's always the way that well, how can I put this? Like, it's never going to be a literal translation, because it's not visual, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. So it's allowed to be in the abstract, I guess, maybe. Let's see.
Funny thing is, if you went to my shaman, he'd probably ask you to sing if you're a singer, if you're able to it. Because the last time he had a lot of people that were there, actually, they had
Like
songs and stuff, and they started singing.
take it, like the musicians that are playing or have
Everybody takes it. The
taken.
shaman takes it. The helpers take
Really?
it. Yeah, and what you
Oh,
notice is this big collective energy moves through everybody. So that's the way it feels to me. It's like everything is played and it's made and it's being created right then and there, and it's never going to be the same again.
huh.
And it's quite magical.
Well, that would be a great trip down to LA. I should plan on that
Yes.
next time. Yeah. I usually go, my dad still lives in LA. Um, yeah, I can't say that I've gone down to LA to take ayahuasca, so that would be a cool different kind of trip. Yeah.
Oh, it would be a trip.
So is that like your go-to psychedelic? Like, have you tried other substances?
I have, but they were such a long time ago. I have, but I will say, let's back up a little bit. We did it on New Year's, the wife and I, and it was a 3-day. And the first 2 days was ayahuasca, and the last day was wachuma, which is the San
Oh,
Pedro plant,
mm-hmm.
which is if ayahuasca is considered the grandmother, wachuma is considered the grandfather. Mostly take it in the daytime, and it is completely not as intense.
Yeah.
You don't, at least I didn't purge. I think a couple people purged, but
Oh,
it's
okay.
soft and it's beautiful and it's real heart opener. It was really nice.
That's funny. The reason that I know what Wachuma is that I had a friend come visit us when I lived in Phoenix, and we had a San Pedro cactus growing in our front yard, which we didn't know what that was.
Right.
She's like, "Oh, you have," and she'd been doing tea ceremony with her friend who'd been attending like a Native American church, I guess.
Right.
So they had done, I guess they do that each time they convene, they pass it around. That's my understanding of it. So, but I never like brewed it or anything.
Right. Yeah,
I
that
wish I
stuff's
had
pretty
known.
magical. It's
Yeah.
it's not as hardcore. I guess if you took a lot, it would be, but
Yeah.
I like that a lot. And in my younger years, I did do LSD and whatnot, and that was it's kind of on par with mushrooms, to be quite honest with you. But mushrooms, every time I have taken them, they've kind of upset my stomach.
Yeah. I had it. It was like I almost felt like I was possessed, or like I had this sort of like, yeah, like I was crazy, like when you see people sort of like talking to themselves, or
Right.
having like arguments with themselves or something. It wasn't unpleasant, but like I had this awareness that I was like, wow, I am crazy right now. Yeah.
The Wachuma is kind of like MDMA, but lighter, I would say.
I've never done MDMA. I don't have a ton of psychedelic experience. Most of my 20s were spent chanting.
No, I was partying.
20s and 30s, yeah. So oh yeah, and being on a harder core diet than you described. So yeah, I haven't had like a ton of experience with stuff like that, so I'm a little cautious, I guess.
Yeah, probably should be. I mean, I don't think anybody should do it unless they're called to do it, especially ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Because if someone's on the fence about doing it, you probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But it is not for the faint of heart. It will take you to the places that you do not want to go usually.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you have that perspective about like understanding what your limiting beliefs are telling you, and then it sounds like sort of having this visual emotional experience of them in the ceremony, right?
Yeah.
So knowing that they're not there to like scare you, and
right, and knowing within 6 hours you're going to be back to normal. I mean, as long as you know that, it's fine. I just think our culture has driven us, a lot of people, into believing certain things will happen, and then you'll go crazy and you don't know what is going to happen.
Oh, okay.
People freak out.
I never heard that one. I think that was maybe a little before my time, like the you'll go insane, because I remember watching a documentary about psychedelics and I was like, wow, that's what people thought. That's nuts.
They kind of drilled that into you. And I know one of the things about MDMA, they started this lie about it drains your spinal fluid and all this stuff. And it's like,
oh wow,
there's no evidence of that anywhere. They just did that to scare kids,
Yeah, there was no research being done on it at all, it seems like.
And it looks like it's about to be passed for therapy uses. It's in stage 3.
Really? MDMA?
Yeah.
Like federally or in California?
Yes, I think federally.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, because so much used with the proper therapist, it has ginormous benefits for PTSD and a bunch of other things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, well, yeah, there's a whole.
That's a rabbit hole.
Yeah. Pharmaceuticals versus the psychedelic world. Yeah.
I remember I was listening to something recently, because I've been on the fence about it, and I know a lot of hardcore spiritual people that are like, some of them boohoo any psychedelic. And I was
Mm.
listening to this talk about it, and they were asking this guru about it. And she was like, no, don't do that stuff. Don't do this stuff. Just do this meditation for 2 hours a day. And I was thinking to myself, wait a minute. Isn't that the same thing? You're telling them to take something, which is this meditation for 2.5 hours a day, and they
Oh,
come out of it, and then how to deal with normal life. Because a lot of the questions that were being asked in the Q&A was like, well, how do I deal with normal life when I'm not on the cushion anymore? One could say, how do I deal with normal life when I'm not tripping balls on whatever? And
right,
how do I
right,
integrate everything? To
right.
me, it's like it's the same things, just a different path. And
Yeah.
I notice both people can get stuck in them. Some people get too much into psychedelics, and some
Mm.
people get too much in meditation, and there's no balance, you know?
Right, right. That's interesting. Actually, when you said 2 hours, I was like, well, that's not super accessible for most people.
No,
Um, whereas like you're not really asking much of somebody when you say take this, you know.
right.
I mean, they do have to do the experience, like, you know, what happens is going to happen, but like there's no sort of like attention span required or like
Right.
you know, discipline, I guess, when you're ingesting a substance, which is why most people would prefer to take something rather than actually like fix their issues. Um,
Yes. And a
but
lot of
that's an
people go
interesting
into it
point.
thinking it's going to fix all their issues, and
Yeah,
they're just disappointed when it doesn't,
right,
because
right.
they're not willing to just sit with it when they take it. It's like, it's uncomfortable. Oh my God, I didn't sign up for this.
Mm,
Like, oh, that's uncomfortability is what you're supposed to sit with.
yeah,
It's just
yeah,
giving you all at once. Unless you want
yeah.
to go sit in a cushion for the next 30 years and hope that it gets you there.
Right.
So there's
Well,
different
and then
speeds for
yeah,
different folks, you know?
right, right. Yeah. Well, also, if you're like, it's sort of like how Joshua talks about, you know, you just get more and more fearful and pretty soon you don't leave your house, you know, like you can sit on a meditation cushion all day and you'll probably be fine, you know.
Right.
But like you won't get to live the life that you came here for, maybe, you know.
Yeah, there was a
Yeah.
meditation course I took, and the guy who ran it called that peace prison.
That's great.
People will reach certain states in meditation and retreats, and they want to stay there, so they sign up for a monastery, and they don't want to
Uh,
grow back to a certain amount. They just want to expand inside that peace prison. But when they
uh,
get back into life, it's like, oh, I can't handle this, and their peace prison is interrupted, so they go back to it.
right. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I've never heard that term. That's really brilliant.
Yeah, I
Peace
thought it was too.
prison.
That's why I brought it up. I was like,
Wow.
that's a good one, peace prison.
Yeah. Man, that's really cool.
And the limiting beliefs,
Funny that you brought
once
that
we're
up.
tackling them, it just makes it bigger and bigger and bigger. So more and more you can be in peace all the time.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the reasons why I think I was drawn to the, you know, the Joshua teachings was like I mean, I was doing everything. I was chanting, I was meditating, I was praying, you know, and all that felt great, but like in life, you know, it's like there was, you know, there was reprieve in the meditation and the chanting and the whatever, but it was still like, you know, it was like, okay, but like how do they integrate? Like I'm still having, like, my life sucks, you know. It wasn't, my life didn't completely suck, that wasn't my, you know, experience most of the time, but when it did suck, it was like, okay, what do? You go back and you meditate. Okay, but like what about the actual thing that I'm dealing with? Like,
Yeah, I'm the same. I was the same way.
yeah.
And I actually didn't like law of attraction stuff, because my thought of it was the shallow end of the spiritual pool.
Hmm. How
Kind of like
so?
it just seemed like to me when I looked at videos and
It's
stuff on
materialistic.
YouTube, it just felt like everybody was going to, like, listening to Abraham and listening to all these law of attraction people. It was just like, oh, I want a boat, I want this, I want that. And it was just like no one wanted to clean up their inside.
Hmm.
I was meditating to clean up my inside, but I experienced a lot of great shifts in meditation, but just like you, when it came to real life, stuff would come up. And when in the Joshua material, when it explained certain mechanisms, it just hit home with me like, oh, that's how it works.
Hmm.
Okay, that wasn't explained to me before in that way. So it all makes sense. And that's kind of why I kind of dove into the Joshua material.
Yeah, that's a, yeah, that's a good point. I think that I was drawn to the, having like done the meditation and the chanting for so long, I think I was drawn to the materialism of it, because I was like, yeah, I kind of forgot about that part of life, you know. Like
Right.
it would be nice to live in a nicer house.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, but then like you, it's such, that's such a dead end too, because you realize like, okay, I'm positive thinking, I'm, you know, okay, I'm doing my affirmations, I'm blah, blah, blah. And then you hit the speed bump and you're like, well, fuck, what do I, you know, what do I do now? I got to get back to feeling good. And I just don't.
Yeah.
What do I do now? Yeah. So it was like kind of the same thing as the, the meditation. It's like, as long as things are going well, it all works.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
So your cat gets ran over by a car or something, it's all different, you know.
right, right. That was a really, and I don't think he told that story on the podcast, but that was kind of a, like a pretty epic moment for me inside my brain, because he tells the story of like his dog getting run over by the car.
Oh, really?
Oh, you haven't heard this one?
No.
Yeah. So they had this dog, Tucker. It's so funny. He doesn't tell the part where like he was actually kind of a terror, because I met this dog and he was like uncontrollable, you know. He was like the demon dog. He was adorable, but like he had a lot of energy and he was, you know, destroying stuff anyway. But one day he gets hit by a car and they're really heartbroken, he and Tracy at the time. And the woman, I don't think they saw it, but the woman comes in and tells them, you know, their dog's died, and they take it to the, I think they take it to the vet, and it's like, yeah, he's gone, or whatever happened. But the next day she either comes to the house or calls. I think she comes to the house and she says, listen, I really hate to do this, but like your dog damaged my car and I'm going to need to file an insurance claim. You know, or like, or so he's so I'm going in my mind, I'm like I'm angry with her. I don't, you know, like I'm like, how insensitive of, you know, like I'm having a reaction to this woman
Right.
while I'm hearing the story. And his response is, okay, I will contact my insurance company about that. Like doesn't fight her at all on it. And then the issue just goes away. He never hears from her again. And I was like,
Wow.
yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah, I really love that story. Because it's, I mean, I would imagine like that would be the time when you would lose your cool, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You
Be
would
like, what
forget
the
everything
shit?
you knew.
What are you talking about?
Yeah,
My dog's dead.
exactly.
Yeah,
And you would, I mean, you would feel so justified feeling victimized by that, you know?
absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't know why I brought, why did I bring that up?
As I mentioned about if your once normal life comes in, like with your cat
Mm,
ran over.
yeah. Yeah. Hearing about those sorts of things, like the ways in which you can handle things differently, has been really healing for me, because
Yeah,
I don't know that I would have known that that was a possibility in terms of a reaction to that,
right.
you know, without hearing that.
And just the whole reading the books about the victim versus the creator and how easily we slip into the victim mode. Just it's so prevalent and
Yeah.
it's so easy. You see it so much around society. You know, people almost have like victim Olympics, you know, and it's just it's crazy. It
Yeah.
is crazy.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to fall into that. You
Yeah.
know, I do that a lot with drivers. I mean, driving in LA, it's my wife will say, just pretend they're robots. Because we read that in one of the Joshua things. Just pretend they're robots.
Oh, that's
They're
funny.
they're off doing their own thing.
Right.
Yelling at this robot makes no difference. So what are you doing?
Right.
I mean, it's a hard one that I still work on all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I was doing that today, actually. It's so funny because we have the kind of, I have like the opposite issue where I live. I don't know if you had this when you were in Seattle, but people drive so slowly. They just
Yes, in the fast lane too. It drives me
like,
nuts. It's like, oh, hey, let's drive slow. Let's get in the far left lane on the freeway.
I'm like, I want to understand this. I think the like understanding that I came to is just that everybody's just so cautious here. Like they're just so um they want to stay so safe. That's what it seems like to me. Like just from, I don't know but anyway, that's sort of how I've made peace with it. I'm like, okay, everybody's just trying to protect themselves and everybody else.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to make peace with it, but
Well, here everyone's aggro. They honk all the time.
I sat behind somebody yesterday who sat at a green light for the entire cycle of the light.
Oh
Like,
man.
I was coming up and I was like, I almost like went around because I honked, didn't move, almost went, and then the light changed and I was like, okay, this is for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, very different, very, very different in LA.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I have noticed from moving here how easily people freak out here when it rains. I mean, people are like, they cancel plans, whether it's just like going somewhere really simple. It's like, oh, I can't go out, it's raining. What are you talking about? It's raining, big deal.
The sky is falling.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks it's a massive flood's going to happen. And it's just a little bit of rain.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for this. I liked this. This is a very diverse conversation. We covered a lot of bases here. Do you have I will put all your links and things in the show notes, but do you have any like thing coming up or anything we didn't mention that you want to tell people about that they should go check out?
No, just check out color codes on my website.
Okay, cool.
Basically, I think they're a way for me to see inside you and for you to see inside you and to learn more about yourself. That's what color codes, they give you more self-awareness and expansion of yourself. And they're very cool and they're very fun. And
do you send them to people, like the actual physical thing, or how does that work?
Well, I started doing color code minis, and they are a 5x5 painting. And once you order it, we have a talk, I connect, I do the painting, I mail it to you, you receive it, you schedule another talk, and that's when I give you what came out, how to look at it, different ways to look at it, what it means as far as what I got from it. And then it's yours, and it's framed, it's ready to hang.
Yeah.
And then I send you a digital copy of it as well.
Oh, cool.
And the Zoom where I talk to you about it, that's recorded, so you can have that and refer back to it later if you so wish.
That's really exciting. What a great offering. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in, y'all, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Okay,
wait,
before you go, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you listen to it on YouTube, you can just leave a comment there. Make sure to subscribe. This really, really helps the algorithm know that you are enjoying it and allows other people to find us. So we thank you, and we'll see you in the next episode.